Cove, and it's the Navy operating base out of Adak. And this marker denotes the site where the Navy operating base, also NOB, Adak, was established in May of 1943. This command directed operations at several widely dispersed areas. The small boat mooring area immediately to the east, Happy Valley and Mid Lake Ordnance areas, the Naval Hospital and Tuxedo Park areas in Hammerhead Cove, the PT boat and submarine facilities at Finger Bay, where we just were, and the Naval Auxiliary Landing Field, first located at Davis Air Force Base and then at Mitchell Field, constructed in the Naval Security Group area, activity area. The NOB mission was to provide support for vessels, aircraft, and their crews, including upkeep, repair, and dry docking, supply of general stores and ammunition, coordination of search and rescue missions, and provision of recreational facilities.
Okay, so this is the Bearing Chapel. The chapel was built on a site overlooking the Davis Lake Warehouse area by the Army Engineers in 1944. It was moved to its present location on Bearing Hill by the Seabees and civilians of the Navy Public Works Department in 1953. It was scheduled to be torn down when the new chapel was built and sat deteriorating for several years. In 1990, Navy legacy funding was combined with volunteer labor from the Adak community to restore the chapel and put it back into use. It was re-roofed and repainted just prior to Navy operational closure in 1996. By 2010, lack of upkeep and the ravages of weather were quickly laying claim to the old chapel. Okay, so this, apparently I just read that wrong on the last one. That was the historic chapel. This is the newer chapel, I guess, but still abandoned since 2010. And it's right down the street from the old chapel. You could pan that way and look at the old chapel. He stays. Get right on his head. Oh, he didn't stay.
Hey there, you are now entering and leaving the Adak National Forest. Don't get lost. And here's the history of this forest. Back in the 43 through 45, Army General Buckner thought it would boost morale to plant some trees. So he got his people to plant these trees. 33, there are 33 at this site, and they're the most visible remnant of this period. It was a formal tree planting program, and it was an effort to boost morale. I already said that. The single sign was placed here on a whim by the locals in the 62-63 range. There's only 2 surviving groves left in this World War II era.
Okay, this is the memorial. A flagpole and stone marker with plaque to commemorate the memory of those who died defending America in the Aleutians. It was dedicated in May 1988. The memorial marks the site of the cemetery that was located on Adak until all of the bodies were transported to the lower 48 states. And there's actually a picture of the cemetery here. So I guess that's the memorial.
This is site number 11 on our tour today, and it's called the Underground Hospital. There's a commemorative plaque out in this field, but we're not allowed to go out in that field because it's been restricted. And the actual hospital itself is about a mile to the west that way. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the hospital right now. The underground hospital was constructed by the Seabees, and the actual size of the facility is the site is off limits and it's not safe to enter. But it was built during the World War II, and it was under the most arduous of circumstances and conditions that a small and devoted staff of naval doctors and nurses operated in the facility. And it was decommissioned after the Naval Air Force Base left. The facility was one of several critical facilities constructed underground for protection from the expected air strikes. The commanders on Adak could only assume that the Japanese fighters, men on the island of Kiska that was just down not far away from here, would mount an attack after they became aware that Adak was full of this large force stationed at Adak. So they built this hospital to be prepared for the casualties that might happen when the Japanese found out that Adak was prepared to fight.
All right, this is Radio City. In September 1942, the U.S. Navy had established its initial communications station on Adak in a small tent, later a Quonset hut, in Navy Town. This operation was conducted by a small detachment of radio men using 2 transmitters and several receivers powered by a 7-kilowatt generator. That sounds pretty small. As of September 1943, all communication assets were relocated to Clam Lagoon. These facilities, along with 2 high-frequency direction finding buildings at Zeto Point, augmented the operations of the newly formed Naval Communications Supplementary Activity, located in the area around this marker. The area was affectionately known as Radio City until October 1951, when it was renamed Naval Communications Station Adak. It remained as a separate command, recommissioned as Naval Security Group Adak in 1977 until operational closure in 1995. So it was still running until 1995, pretty recently. Well, 15 years ago anyway, 25 years ago, huh?
to special spot number 16 on our tour guide, and it's the Special Operations Zulu site. We came here, we stopped here to look for the wreckage of the seaplane along the shoreline here, but we couldn't find it. We think it might have washed away, but we're here now at a site called the Special Operations Building. In mid-1962, a specially designed detachment of communications technicians from the Naval Communications Station, Adak, augmented an operation within a small hut on this site. Now it's just manned by what we think is a golden eagle. This activity became known as Spec Ops. It was moved to Zeto Point, where it was renamed CIS Zulu. After moving to an improved site on the east side of Clam Lagoon, the operation was known as Classic Wizard. The last facility complex to house this operation was located due north of this marker at North Lake. From its initial inception, this operation served to provide extremely valuable support service to the Navy's tactical fleet units in the northern Pacific Ocean region, as well as national intelligence authorities. So, I forgot what comes next.
Golden Eagle manning it.
I said that already.
Oh. This, we think, is the Zeto point. It's right next to the Zulu site, and it's the top of that hill, the remains of the Joint Army-Navy Harbor Control Defense Point. During World War II, it consisted of 3 155 millimeter coastal artillery guns on Panama mounts, concrete pads with iron rails and pintles. These guns had a range of 17 miles and covered the approaches to Sitkin Sound and Kullock Bay. The gun mounts are still in place, along with scattered ruins of underground shelters, machine gun bunkers, and wooden stairs. Zeto Point. This is the Navy Auxiliary Airfield. In January 1943, 2 hangars and a number of support facilities were constructed on the south end of runway A of the Davis Army Airfield. These temporary facilities made up the initial naval aviation contribution to Adak's offensive, directed towards Kiska and Attu. So this might have been close to where Grandpa Frank was flying out of, because he was flying to Kiska and Attu. The aircraft assigned to this air facility included 6 patrol bomber seaplanes known as PBYs or Catalinas, and a number of small OSU-2 observation reconnaissance aircraft. By May 1943, all of the naval airplanes were moved to Albert E. Mitchell Field, a newly constructed naval air station and seaplane base, located at what became the Naval Security Group Activity Area. This is a pretty cool building because well, you can really tell it looks like an airplane hangar with those big old doors. And it's got a bunch of cool paintings on the side of different squadron groups, flyer groups, I'm assuming. And it's also one of the first things you see when you get on the island and you come out of the airport. I think the airport is right there, right over there. So this is one of the first buildings you see when you come to Adak. Oh yeah, little air raid bunkers, I'm guessing. Big old heavy steel door. Here's an underground bunker. This is the Longview Davis Army Airfield. On August 30, 1942, the date the initial landing force arrived on Adak, the 807th Army Aviation Engineering Battalion set to work constructing a dike and draining the tidal flat. This was a tidal flat. That's what I was talking about earlier. Between Kullock Bay and Sweeper Cove areas to create an airfield. Only 10 days later, bombing and freighter escort squadrons under the command of Major John S. Chenault took off from one of the completed runway for a full bombing raid against Kiska. That would have been off of that steel mat runway that I keep talking about, and this right here where Grandpa Frank was taken off. On October 1942, the initial temporary runway was replaced by 5,800 feet permanent runway, Runway A, which was adjacent and parallel to the west side of the temporary runway. Construction of a second runway, Runway B, which ran east to west, was begun immediately after the completion of Runway A. The second runway was initially 6,000 feet long and covered in steel matting. It was then extended to 7,800 feet late in 1943. Late in 1943, both runways were paved. Runway A was used for P-38s. Grandpa was flying with the P-38 escorts and was used for B-17s and other bombers like the B-24. That's what Grandpa Frank was flying. Although this operational area was initially named Longview Army Airfield by early 1943, it was renamed Davis Army Airfield. These runways, though they have been structurally updated, are the same ones that were in continuous use from the end of World War II to the operational closure of Naval Air Station Adak in 1996. So yeah, that right there is the airport, the modern airport. You can see the modern looking control tower. And that over there might be an older one, not quite sure. But this is where we came in and landed on our modern commercial aircraft, airliner jet. So this is the site of Army Town. It's just modern buildings now, but this would have been the Quonset huts back in the day. And we're right across the street from the airfield over there and the airport. So this is the site that commemorates the establishment of Army Town by the 807th and 108th Army Aviation Engineer Battalions, along with the largest contingent of Seabees in any theater in World War II. The small city they built stretched from Norpack Hill to Sweeper Cove. In only 5 months, September 1942 to January 1943, a settlement of Quonset huts was erected here. It provided shelter and support to 90,000 troops and 5,000 construction personnel assigned to Adak as the invasion force for Attu and Kiska Island campaigns. So it might have been right over here where Frank would have been staying, right next to the airfield here in the Quonset huts. And you can kind of see this is not a very good picture, but there are these little round half dome looking huts right there. Army Town, Adak. Kind of surreal now because most of these homes, even though they're modern, have been abandoned. And it's like a ghost town now. That's one of the striking features when you visit this island, is almost everything's abandoned now. And all the windows are blown out and grass growing inside the buildings. We'll get some more shots of that as we go. It's to the left, the next house. Or is that it? Oh yeah, I guess that's it. Zoom in on the second story on the left room. All the way, yeah, that room right there. Grass growing on the second story. Of course, when you visit Adak, everybody's got to see this. The old abandoned McDonald's. And it's still got the Bobby's World advertisements. That tells you how old it is. And this is Navy Town. In the area around where the Navy Administration and the Public Works building, the red, white, and blue sheds now stand, the Seabees constructed a small Quonset complex housing 1,000 Navy personnel in January 1943. Not that many Navy compared to the Army Air Corps. The Personnel located here augmented the operations of Navy Auxiliary Air Facility that was located on the present site of Pat Kelly Air Terminal until May 1943, and also supported the Navy operating base that was located at the Roberts Village housing area until 1950. The three huge waterfront warehouses in this area, as well as the piers and breakwater, were all constructed in 1943 and 1944 as part of an Army Reserve supply depot. The depot was built as a contingency staging area for a possible invasion of Japan from the North Pacific. The original wood siding was replaced by corrugated metal at an unknown date, and the red, white, and blue colors added in 1976 in honor of America's bicentennial. So what you can't see from here, right on the other side of here are the docks and the break wall or the jetty and the piers. So this is where they would have pulled all the ships up, because this is right on the other side of here, the best place in the harbor to park ships. So that's important because this is where they would have brought everything onto this island to build the island.
This is stop number 13 on our tour today. Albert E. Mitchell Field behind me. In early spring of 1943, the Navy established facilities for the operation of 12 PBY amphibious aircraft at the southeast shore of Lake Andrew. These operations required berthing, messing, and dispensary facilities for 30 officers and 300 enlisted men, including plane crews and ground support personnel. By the summer of 1943, plans for the overall enlargement of the base were approved and implemented. 2 permanent runways were constructed between Lake Andrew and Clam Lagoon, and facilities to support 120 officers and 2,000 enlisted men were erected. Catalina and Kingfisher seaplanes, PBYs, and Ventura PV-1 light naval bombers made up the complement of aircraft. Approximately 350 men of the 32nd Naval Construction Battalion took part in this construction work. This air station served throughout the war. Upon its decommissioning in January 1950, aircraft operations were relocated to the site of Davis Army Airfield, and the command was joined with the Naval Operating Base at Sweeper Cove and recommissioned as Naval Station Adak. Behind me you see number 12, the hangar ruins. Can you see them? All right. In the winters of 1943 and 44, Lake Andrews froze to a depth of 18 inches. In response to the severe cold, several large wooden hangars were built by the 32nd Naval Construction Battalion to make conditions for repairing the aircraft more bearable. The hangar structure at this site was last used as a sand barn and withstood the extremes of both cold and high wind for over 50 years, until the last standing remains were flattened by strong winds during the winter of 1995-6. It's a reminder of how essential the can-do spirit of the Seabees has been for the continuity of naval operations. we are late afternoon, but the sun doesn't set till 10 o'clock at night. But we're at number 8, the Kullock Bay landing site. On August 28, 1942, the U.S. naval submarines SS Triton and SS Tuna surfaced 4 miles due east of this beach and disembarked a 37-man U.S. Army intelligence gathering unit led by Colonel Lawrence V. Kastner. The unit was known as the Alaska Scout, or more affectionately as Kastner's Cutthroats. Their mission was to gather information about the Japanese troop strength on Adak and to report their findings to the landing force already on its way from Dutch Harbor. No enemy troops were found, and on August 30th, a 17-ship landing force with 4,500 men and tons of heavy equipment arrived. Their mission? To build an airstrip and troop staging area in preparation for the retaking of the enemy-occupied Aleutian Islands of Attu and Kiska. So this is the beach where it all started, 1942.
We're here in 2021, and a lot of the stuff I found online says there's lots of Quonset huts here, but this is one of only 2 that I've seen. And after talking to some people on the island, they say that most of them are gone now, and almost everything else is gone too. There's very little left as far as historical remains from the World War II era. I wonder what that thing is, like a water tank. I don't know if I can get in there, it's so nasty. I guess these things are like pretty good for resisting the wind. It almost looks like someone was living in here not too long ago.
We're at number 20 on our tour. It's the last of the numbered places to stop. And this is Finger Bay. We've been here before, but this is number 20. It's the patrol, torpedo, boat, docks, and submarine net at Finger Bay. At this site on Finger Bay in mid-1943, docking and replenishment facilities were constructed to accommodate several U.S. Navy PT boats and a small number of submarines. Within this safe harbor, these operations, under the control of Navy Operating Base Adak, maintained and supported fast attack craft. These boats were the main line of defense against the seemingly imminent encroachment of enemy warships. A few hundred meters to the southwest is a remnant pile of metal anti-submarine netting that stretched across the mouth of Finger Bay. And you can see where that mouth is. There's still a little bit of you can see a little bit of where the netting might have come across. And I'll bet most of the netting has been removed. But earlier today, we met a fellow fisherman by chance who was the son of a commanding officer, and he lived here in the 50s. He said they maintained this part because of the Cold War, and he said that he remembers that side of the bay being a dock for the submarines, and he said it was full of Quonset huts and submarine bays. And he said he used to ride his bike along this side of the bay and go up here and catch salmon riding his bike when he was 10 or 12 years old. So this island is full of history, and we were here to see it today.